Good afternoon. This is Frank Marasek, President of EE Reports and co-chair of the New York City 2030 District. And welcome to our Green Leasing and Smart Submetering webinar sponsored by CircuitMeter. There is little doubt that one of the greatest energy efficiency barriers today is the split incentive issue. Who is paying the utility bills and who will pay for the energy conservation measures? Fortunately, we have the Institute for Market Transformation leading the way with their valuable green leasing tools that helps align the financial and environmental goals of landlords and tenants to work together to save money and conserve resources. Now, to make this model work, we need smart submetering solutions from companies like CircuitMeter to accurately measure tenant consumption and verify the savings generated by the retrofit. But before we get started, I'd like to provide a little background on the 2030 District, currently in 20 cities nationwide. The vision of the 2030 Districts is to establish a global network of thriving, high-performance building districts and cities, uniting communities to catalyze transformation in the built environment and the role it plays in mitigating and adapting to climate change. So how do we do this? The key is the private-public partnership. Engaging local leaders, other nonprofits, tenants, landlords, and service providers is by leveraging all these partners and their participation that is a proven way to get traction. This is similar to the successful program we have here in New York, like Solarize and Energize, where you get the people together, the community leaders and the trusted sources, and that's the way you can engage the property owners and tenants and make an impact. There's a great deal of a lack of trust and technical knowledge, and by getting the people that they trust involved, their local leaders and so forth, it's a better way of getting people to understand the technology, which is critical, and then hopefully take action and get a project done. Here in New York City, we work with community boards 1 and 2 in downtown Brooklyn and Manhattan. We also work with the Community Building Performance Lab, NYU Urban Future Lab, Solar One, Con Ed, NYSERDA, and others. I would especially like to give a shout out to Brooklyn Borough President Eric Adams and his team, especially Jeff Lowell, for all the support they've given us. So the 2030 District, our goal is to generate demand, get more projects done. And we hope to do this by providing education, outreach, and project aggregation from a trusted, unbiased third-party source. We think that can help with overcome the lack of trust and the technical knowledge that's out there in the industry for most building owners who don't have the understanding of all this great technology like we're going to find out about today, and how to verify the savings that are generated by these projects. The 2030 District also provides free consulting and energy audits to our building owners, so we think that'll definitely help shorten the cycle and get more members to join our district here. Some of our property owners include the Brooklyn Navy Yard, Clinton Hill Co-op, Concord Village, the Albanese Group, and the New School, to name a few. And as you see here, we're aligning ourselves with the city and as far as the technologies that we want to focus on that we think are critical to reaching our 2030 and the real drastic 2050 goals. So electrifying New York City buildings, first and foremost, you have to stop and eliminate all these gas and oil boilers out there. They're just, going to emit carbon emissions and not going to enable us to reach our goals. So we need to electrify as many buildings as we can using heat pumps, variable refrigerant flows, energy recovery ventilation, and rooftop units. We did a webinar last month with the Advanced RTU campaign and PACE control on some of the technologies there. So that's the kind of education that we want to provide the building owners and get them on board with the technologies there, which is like smart buildings, which, meters and sensors being critical. And Internet of Things is just, transforming the whole industry here, how we can more inefficiently and more accurately fix things and make automation of these buildings happen in real time and make smart buildings happen, which is obviously the goal of everyone here today and beyond. And then lastly, distributed energy, microgrids. We need to have more local distribution of energy locally done here. And the 2030 District will actually be co-producing an event with the Architecture Institute of New York and ASHRAE next month, September 19th, at the AIA New York downtown. So we're excited to do that here. If you'd like more information on the 2030 District, please contact us at info@nyc2030.org, and we'd love to talk and discuss how we can help you and your constituents. Okay, before we get started, we have a few notes. The webinar is being recorded and will be available next week. The presentation deck is also available in the handout section below, and we will be taking questions at the end if time permits. So let's get this show on the road here, and let's talk about high performance leasing, energy aligned, green leasing. No matter what you call it, we really need it, and we're going to have, if we're going to have any chance of reaching our energy and sustainability goals. It also makes tremendous business sense. With savvy property owners like Vornado having a standard language in all their leases, so they don't even call it green lease or anything. It's just part of their regular leasing language. And I know that they've been submetering since 2010 as a way of cost recovery and removing the millions of dollars off their balance sheets annually by automatically boosting their bottom line by removing these utility costs off their balance sheets. So with that, I'm delighted to introduce Alex Harry, IMT's program manager on the market engagement team. Alex develops cooperative working relationships with landlords, tenants, and property management groups and trade associations in order to devise long-term energy efficiency topics on green leases and reduction of small business energy management. Sorry about that, Alex. Alex also works with varied audiences, including building owners, tenants, chambers of commerce, utility alliances, and consultants. So, Alex, we're definitely going to recruit you here for the 2030 district. So, Alex, with that, take it away.
Sure. Thanks, Frank. And good to be speaking to everybody today about high-performance leasing. My talk today is going to really focus on, one, what is high-performance leasing, or some might call the green lease? Why is it useful to the commercial real estate industry, and where is the market going? Next slide. So let's start with a little bit of background on my organization, Institute for Market Transformation, or IMT. Our basic mission is to create demand for high-performance buildings, and then the vision derived from that mission is that we're able to create a world where all buildings are high-performing, and that's a positive impact on our physical, social, and economic well-being. As Frank stated earlier, my main role at IMT is to focus on engaging the private sector. So a lot of my work does involve coordinating and helping bring best practices to the commercial real estate market. Next slide. So as I said before, my talk, the first half of it will focus on what is green leasing and how is it used. Next slide. So in a nutshell, the high-performance lease is about aligning the environmental goals of landlords and tenants to basically make it both parties want to work together to both conserve resources, save money, and really ensure the efficient operation of buildings. And as Frank said before, the green lease is more about integrating language into a lease, and it's not necessarily a standalone document. It's really taking the general clauses in a lease, the utility section, the capital improvement section, the alterations clause, and just adding sustainability or energy aligned language to those already existing clauses. Next slide. And the key goal of high performance leasing is to overcome that split incentive problem. So the split incentive problem with traditional leases, they're usually divided along the lines of who pays. So is the tenant paying the utilities? Is the landlord paying the utilities? Which party is more incentivized to take energy saving action? Well, the green lease is about overcoming those hurdles and making it possible and more feasible for both parties to want to invest in energy efficiency or health and wellness or sustainability, etc. Next slide. And as I stated before, the two big goals is to overcome the split incentive problem for high performance leasing. And the second, the end result is that these spaces become more valuable because they have those reduced expenses, and because these buildings and these spaces are run more efficiently, the productivity increases in the space. And so, what is the big business case for high performance leasing? A few years ago, IMT put together what's in a green lease, which is an assessment of the office market, and if all office buildings incorporated a green lease, what would be the benefit of energy savings and dollar savings of that. And so what we found from that study was that if everyone implemented a green lease, especially with pass-through clauses, that they could reduce energy by up to 22%, which translates to about 50 cents reduced savings in utility bills. And when you scale that up across the whole country, that's about $3 billion a year that could be saved just by implementing the green lease. Next slide. As Frank said before, there's a lot of groups out there that have incorporated energy-aligned clauses out there. A few in my experience, we've come across all different types of audiences: retail, local government, Fortune 500 companies, nonprofits, small businesses, all sorts of landlords and tenants of Class A to all the way to Class B and C properties. They're all, taking the initiative to include energy-aligned language in their lease. Next slide. A few of the common ways that I see energy-aligned or high-performance language included in the lease is about implementing rules that kind of govern the operations of a building and how tenants are to use the space. So a lot of that stems around building rules and regulations. So that's where you would see clauses in a lease that ban the use of space heaters, for example, or other types of harmful or high energy usage products like vending machines in tenant spaces. That's usually where you see language like that. The next one is energy and data issues. So if you're in a location where you're required to submit your energy usage to the local government, sometimes there's some difficulty in getting your tenants to send you their energy information, their submetered or metered information to you on a regular basis. There are clauses out there that address that. Capital expense sharing. So if you're doing a capital improvement that will reduce the whole building's energy usage, like say you're installing a new chiller or replacing the roof with a white roof, you could pass through that cost to your tenant through amortization. And then the third one is requiring that tenant spaces meet certain build-out requirements. Maybe that's LEED, maybe that's WELL, maybe that's Energy Star for tenant space. There are clauses out there that address that. Next slide. And then the key benefits, and I touched on it a little bit before about the business case, but the key benefits is that there are lower operating expenses due to including a green lease in your operations, and the tenant is able to benefit from those savings as well. There's that improved employee comfort and health and productivity. The tenant also benefits from having their spaces be more attractive to employees that they want to recruit and retain. Landlords are able to meet their own CSR goals, or maybe a tenant has aggressive CSR, corporate sustainability goals that they would also like to meet. So they're able to share in that benefit. And then, as I mentioned before, oftentimes there is that local government ordinance that landlords or tenants are required to comply with. And so having a green lease can help you meet those requirements as well. Next slide. So the one question I get asked a lot is, where do you start with the green lease? And what I usually recommend first is that either party, whether you're a tenant or a landlord, that you get a list of things that you find to be a pain point to you. So is it that your utility bills are high, or are you on year 3 of a 5-year lease and your rooftop unit is about to die out on you? How can you get help from your landlord and updating that cost? So really outlining what are the issues that you face as a landlord or as a tenant, and trying to broach that subject with your other party, your landlord or your tenant. And then also the other big step is trying to get information, energy data information. So whether that's if you're a tenant asking to have a submeter in your space, seeing how your space regularly uses energy, how can you reduce energy in your space? If you're a landlord, it's taking a look at how your whole building is using energy, benchmarking, using Energy Star Portfolio Manager to get a sense of a snapshot of, where is the problem, and then beginning to take steps on how to reduce your usage there. Landlords also have another tool at their disposal, which is conducting a tenant survey. So you can submit a survey to your tenants to see, are they happy with the hot and cold temperatures of the building? Are they happy with how the grounds and common areas are kept up from a cleanliness standpoint? And then really use that to maybe inform changes that you'd like to make later down the road when it comes to the green lease. So there's many steps here to really kind of get the ball rolling and start a conversation with your other party on what you two both can do to save energy and create more energy efficient and sustainable spaces. Next slide. So I also wanted to highlight a few resources that IMT has. We have these two guides. One is that are geared towards tenants to use when they move into a new space, or maybe perhaps they're already occupying a space. But these are really guidebooks to help bridge and start conversations between tenants and landlords. So the idea is that these resources could be branded by a landlord and then given to their tenants, upon move-in, or to their existing tenants, as a way to kind of start a conversation of, what would you like to see happen around sustainability, recycling, energy management, water management, and get that open dialogue happening there. And if you'd like to take a look at that, imt.org/resources, that's where you could find the two guides there. Next slide. So now that we've gone over the kind of particulars and the basic framework about what a green lease is, I'd like to highlight what some of the leaders in the space are doing. Next slide. So one of the big programs that IMT runs in partnership with the U.S. Department of Energy, Better Buildings, is Green Lease Leaders. And Green Lease Leaders recognizes those in the field, so landlords, tenants, brokers, who are really taking the next step to really not only incorporate energy-aligned or sustainability-aligned language in their lease, but they're going forward the next step and executing that at the building level and even at the portfolio level. Next slide. So this program has been in place since 2014. And as I said before, it's about recognizing those leaders in the commercial real estate space. And since the program's been going on since 2014, we've recognized 1.8 billion square feet of commercial space. So that's a lot of commercial real estate leaders in the field that have really, saw the value of including high performance leasing into their portfolio operations. Next slide. So this year we had the largest class of green lease leaders. We actually had the chance to recognize them at the BOMA convention in San Antonio in June. So this is pretty new information. There's 23 leaders this year. I think altogether we've probably recognized maybe about 50 leaders since the program has started. So there's companies of all sizes. There's the large commercial real estate owners, nonprofits like Rocky Mountain Institute or NRDC, banks, TD Bank, retail, Ulta Beauty. So we had a really diverse class this year, and so we're looking forward to keeping the momentum going and having a bigger class of recipients for the next year. Next slide. So now I wanted to give a few case studies on what some of these green lease leaders are doing. NRDC, or the Natural Resources Defense Council, is one of the leaders that was really using the lease to reflect their mission. So their mission is really about combating climate change. So being good stewards of the earth, they wanted to make sure they were conserving resources and saving energy. So they have an office in New York, and their lease features cost recovery clauses, and they have lease provisions that require tenants to track their energy and water use. And they also have tenant efficient fit out and operational guidelines. Additionally, they've gone the extra step, and they've developed a training and help with IMT to require that their brokers get somewhat more knowledgeable about energy efficiency and sustainability. So on an annual basis, they require that their brokers receive at least 1 hour of energy efficiency training. Next slide. Another leader in the field, Kimco, they're a retail shopping center landlord. They have included requirements that all of their tenant spaces are to be submetered. So that way the tenants are able to see exactly how much they're using, and they're not caught off guard when it comes time to pay their rent every month. And then they also have a fixed CAM charge, and that also provides some stability to the tenant. They know what they're supposed to pay every month, and then there's a chart showing how much that CAM is to go up based on projected expenses each year in their schedule. And the tenants are also required to build out their spaces efficiently. So they're in the process now of kind of taking a wholesale approach of making sure that portfolio-wide green leasing is a strategy that they're covering through all of their leases. Next slide. And again, here are some additional resources that we have available. If you're interested in learning more about who the green lease leaders are from this year or from previous years, please check out greenleaseleaders.com. There's also information and FAQs on what it takes to become a green lease leader. Additionally, we also have Green Lease Library. So if you're looking for more case studies, recorded webinars, actual lease language that you'd like to take a look at, that's a very good place to start. And then, as always, there's additional information at imt.org. Next slide. So I hope that I was able to give everybody the information they needed to kind of pique their interest about green leasing. And if they have any questions, please feel free to reach out to me. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Alex. The NYC 2030 district will definitely be engaging landlords and tenants and hopefully creating some great green leasing dialogue. So thank you, and look forward to working with you in the future.
Yep, looking forward to it.
Yes, so okay, so now the most important part of a successful high-performance leasing and project cost recovery system, you need smart submetering to make it happen. Fortunately, we have low-cost Internet of Things technology providers like CircuitMeter that are transforming the way we can access important consumption data for landlords and tenants. So, Kelly, I may have interrupted you, but I've known Kelly for quite a while here, and let me just get the screens right here. And Kelly's been working in smart building controls and automation for just about as long as anybody I know, and there is no better expert we can have to discuss how to generate substantial savings with smart submetering solutions in New York today. So with that, welcome, Kelly, and take it away.
Wonderful, and thank you very much for that wonderful introduction, Frank and Alex. Fantastic information about the Green Lease program and the growing class of companies that are getting involved. I think one of the things that we can all agree upon is the fact that sustainability and the drive for a lowering of consumption across the board is something that we're all working hard on, and that as we get rid of the low-hanging fruit, the challenge becomes larger and larger. So With that being said, a little bit of an introduction about CircuitMeter, and I'll make it brief because I want to keep it somewhat agnostic. But CircuitMeter is a Canadian company and really developed some circuit level metering solutions that provide real-time values and manage to do so in an incredibly cost-effective way. And I'll leave it at that. If there's more interest in CircuitMeter, we can be found at circuitmeter.com. And obviously, we'd be more than happy to talk to you about how we might be able to fit your needs. As far as myself, as Frank said, I have been in the industry for about 30 years now, starting in the building automation space, working through smart buildings technology and developing very advanced IoT platforms and big data analytics. And finally finding myself directly in the metering space, utilizing meter data, which is a fantastic set of data to drive efficiency. So the first question that we all want to ask ourselves is, why smart submetering? And really in New York specifically, but globally, it focuses on the goals that we've established, not only as a state in New York and as a city in New York City specifically, but the focus on the fact that buildings themselves account for the vast majority of our energy consumption. So if you take a look at the overall consumption of energy in the US, buildings account for almost 40% of that energy use. And in fact, 68% of electricity use. And that has led New York to really take a hard look at how consumption can be reduced and set some very, very lofty goals. So the state of New York has set a goal of a reduction of 40% in greenhouse gas by 2030. And that's going to come about in a reduction of consumption and a conversion of production to green source energies such as wind and solar. But it will also require each and every building owner and homeowner to really take an active participatory role in the drive to decrease energy use. New York City has even loftier goals than the state, in that New York City is looking to drive greenhouse gas emissions down by 80%. That is an amazing number. It is an incredibly lofty goal, and they want to achieve that by 2050. So if you own real estate in New York City, then those goals will certainly most likely affect you and how you manage your properties. At the end, the truth of the matter is that when it comes to energy consumption, it's often looked at as a cost of doing business, when it should really be looked at more as a liability and managed as a liability. And if you don't measure it, you can't take active steps to control and manage that liability. So we believe metering to be a fantastic solution to really understanding how you're using energy. With that, moving on to the next slide. Next slide, Frank.
What I want to talk, Kelly, I'm having a little trouble with your screen. Is this it?
Yes, that's it. That's the one I want. Yeah.
Okay.
So what I want to talk about is, as a building owner or a tenant, what is it that you want to look for when you look for a modern metering solution? And in essence, what you want to really look for is something that is very, very easy to implement and isn't overly burdensome in terms of network connectivity and installation work by the electricians. Just something that's very easy to get online and install. Second thing is pretty much all modern metering systems, you want to look for real-time data. There are some older systems that will not provide you very granular or high velocity data in terms of time. So you want to look for a system that provides you data in seconds, not in 15 minutes like you might get from your utility. You also want to make sure that you're accurate. The data accuracy of 1% or better is fairly common in the market. If you're going to be doing billing, the requirements in New York State and in most jurisdictions is 0.5%. And you can certainly find metering solutions out there, and CircuitMeter is one of them that are more accurate than that. So 1% accuracy or better is kind of where you want your benchmark to be at a minimum. Cost effective. One of the amazing things about metering technology, and I think technologies of all kinds, is that as technology has advanced, the cost has come down significantly. So in the past, where you might be paying upwards of $300 per circuit to measure electricity, now you will be able to find solutions that are $50 per circuit approximately. And much of that depends on the size of the circuit you're monitoring and such, but $50 is a good benchmark for that. And you want a system that's granular and flexible enough to start, maybe not so granular, but move to a very granular look. And what I mean by that is that you want a solution that's really allowing you to measure at first your most power consuming assets, things like chillers and towers and pumping systems. But you want to be able to have a system that allows you to grow that, or maybe even initially be able to measure and able to control and analyze your energy use on circuits down to the individual circuit level, allowing you to really manage that liability of energy consumption in real time. So the next thing that you should look for is a scalable system. You want a system that is designed not only to operate within the single building, but to operate at a portfolio level. So if you have 5 buildings or 100 buildings, you want to be able to use a common platform that's going to provide you the data for all of those assets. And you want that because you want to be able to do comparisons between them, so that you can immediately identify where your biggest consumers are, where your biggest inefficiencies are, and address them in order from least efficient to most in terms of retrofits and renovations. Other things in terms of scalability is you want to be able to have enough users and enough flexibility in users that the people who need the information get the information. So for CircuitMeter, we offer an unlimited number of users, but typically you may have several groups that want to see the data. You may have a buildings team that is responsible for the maintenance in the building that's going to see one set of data. You may have financial folks that are going to see another set of data, and you may have sustainability folks that want to see something totally different. So you want to make sure that you have that flexibility and scalability in the system. And you also want to look for a system that has advanced analytics and measurement and verification tools. So there are a lot of systems out there. One of the distinguishing features that you want to look for is systems that really provide you the tools that are required to do something with the data. It's great to have a ton of electrical data, but if you don't have tools that allow you to analyze that data easily, take a look at even things like energy conservation measures and very easily see what what your cost was before an energy conservation measure and after, and validate that you actually got the savings you achieved. Compare assets to other like assets, compare buildings to other buildings. If you don't have a platform level set of tools that allow you to analyze that data, then really what you've got is a data lake, and you stand the potential of drowning in it, so to speak. So another thing, and this is oftentimes important for the sustainability folks, is carbon accounting tools. So you want to look at a platform that not only allows you to look at your information in terms of energy and in terms of dollars, but also in terms of carbon. Okay, and it's probably wise to look for a platform that takes that carbon and includes adjustments for your production area and things like e-grid data, where the utilities actually report how much of the power they generate is from fossil fuel and how much is from green source, because clearly that affects your carbon emissions. If your utility is generating 30% of power with green source energy, that's carbon you are not emitting. So you want a system that's advanced enough to understand and account for that. And you want a metering system that's going to allow you not only to look at electricity, but to look at other utilities as well, things like water, steam, gas, and any others that you want to look at. And finally, I would say that you want something that's easily accessible anywhere. So whether you're sitting at a desk or you're looking at it on your phone or you're viewing it through a tablet, you want to have the same access to data so that you can make informed on-time decisions. So stepping to the next slide, we'll talk a little bit about why submetering and why now. So along with the lofty goals that New York State and New York City have established, New York City specifically has passed a number of regulations and laws that really are requiring metering to be installed. So you've got a series of laws, starting with Local Law 84 and progressing through Local Law 88, that have really become somewhat more somewhat more heavy in terms of requirements and what they need. But really, the whole discussion that's going on within the state government and the REV program that is being run by the state and the local city government is utilizing big data and advanced technology to monitor things down to a very granular level. So it's really something that's being pushed and being looked for to use real data to take a look at your sustainability. But starting with Local Law 84 was really the first and required benchmarking of your sustainability and energy consumption in buildings 25 square feet or better. That moved up to the Energy Conservation Code, which Local Law 85, which was really a requirement to update your systems to current code, even if you did somewhat minor renovations within your building. Moving forward to Local Law 87, which required that you perform energy audits and retro commissioning activity on buildings of 50,000 square feet or greater. And finally, the most recent is Local Law 88, which required originally buildings of 25,000 square feet to install submeters, including on existing tenant space. And it had to be installed on tenant space any bigger than 5,000 square feet and requires that you provide tenants with monthly statements. Now, Local Law 88 doesn't really hold any or have any teeth until 2025 when you must be compliant. But if you wait until the last minute, obviously there'll be tremendous challenges, not only in getting the systems installed and getting people maybe available to do it, but probably in terms of cost. So the sooner the better to get the technology in place. So moving on and forward to the next slide, we'll talk a little bit about what else the state and the city is doing to help people achieve this. So they've set these lofty goals and they've said, look, you've got to comply by this time and you've got to have these systems in place. But what they've done at the same time is they've created a set of incentives. So the first incentive, and I think you're one slide ahead of me, Frank, go back to the one that says NYCERTA in big blue letters. I think you're still one more ahead. Okay, so the primary incentive that they've created, and this is a statewide incentive that's run through NYCERTA, and it's a program called Real-Time Energy Management, or RTEM. Okay, and RTEM is a great program that applies to multifamily, commercial, and industrial sites that will provide up to 30% worth of savings based on the incentive structure that you use for up to 5 years and up to $155,000 per project for the design of a granular metering system, the installation of the metering system, and any ongoing fees or cloud-hosted services costs. So as you take a look at the two charts that I have on the side, you can see that there's an option A and an option B to achieve this incentive. The first one, option A, will allow you to get the system installed and pay for 30% of the design and the install, and then carry 30% of the hosted fees for the first 3 years, and then 20% the following 2 years. And under incentives B, it's very similar, but it's 30%. And option B is if you pay for everything up front. Option B, it will pay for 30% for the first 3 years and 20% for the final 2. So a great program out there. CircuitMeter is listed as a systems provider under that program. So if you're interested in taking a look at that, we can help you qualify. So moving on to the next slide, Frank. So the value that this will provide for a building owner is really the access to data and what you can do with that data. So with real-time granular electrical metering and metering of water and steam and other consumables, you have a centralized utility tracking and reporting system. So that data can be used not only to analyze for inefficiencies and to look for things like motors that may be failing or air handling units that may be consuming more than they should, but also just to do the general utility tracking and the gathering of the information for bill or energy audit purposes. It allows you to monitor both base building loads and tenant loads and create reports that are around the common areas, the tenant areas, and really kind of structure a report so that each individual group within the building understands how they are contributing to the overall consumption. And we'll see a little bit later, but one of the things is that people, just as a part of understanding what they're consuming, in general, it's almost like a sugar pill. They take steps without even realizing it that actually add to significant savings. So that knowledge is really, really important. So next, it will allow you to continually identify energy inefficiencies and see opportunities to improve on your efficiency within your building. And it's really what we refer to as real-time energy audit. But as you're monitoring equipment in real time, you're getting this, rapid data every couple of seconds from every circuit that you're looking at. You're able to see when things start acting erroneously and when they're not meeting the specifications of the manufacturer. And it's very easy to pick that out when you see that data in such a high velocity and granular format. The ability to track and compare energy performance across portfolios or across assets, and we refer to that as real-time benchmarking. So it allows you, if you've got a stacked building where you have the same air handler on every floor, it's very, very easy to create a comparison between those. And if any one of them gets out of line with the rest, maybe set an alert that says, go take a look at that system. Or if you have motors and again, a motor is consuming too much current, based on its overall load, you can create alerts around that. So that real-time benchmarking is really important. The automated detection system for faults and diagnosis, and really the automated notification piece of this is important, because one of the primary things that you want to look for is you want to have actionable data. It's great to have the data and have the platform and the tools, and certainly it is very worthwhile to take a deep look into the data. But as you discover inefficiencies and as you address them, you want to make sure that you have built analytics around those inefficiencies so that the next time they occur, you don't have to go looking for it. It automatically comes and looks for you. So that automatic notification is really critical. And then finally, the verify, or next to last, verify energy efficiency project savings. So that's a measurement verification piece at a platform level, having tools so that you can see when you do an energy conservation measure, whether it's a lighting retrofit or a motor replacement, or another mechanical piece of equipment. You want to be able to baseline it before you do the change out of the equipment, and then see the real results after the replacement. Excuse me, so that you can validate the actual savings and make sure that you're achieving what you're looking to achieve. And finally, with all of this energy data and really understanding at an asset level how you're consuming, it makes it really, really efficient and easy to do peak demand reductions in a very, very intelligent way. The typical strategy for me when I spent 20 years in the building automation space was really a kind of a not very smart but long list of equipment that you would shut off. And usually it was, what's the least important piece of equipment that we have in the building that we can do without it? When we get a call to reduce our peak demand, that's the first thing we shut off. And if we haven't achieved where we want to be there, we set off the next thing in the list. And you kind of have this list for no particular reason other than it's the level of importance of the equipment that you start shutting off in sequence. When you have the energy data in real time at an asset level, you're able to see how each of those systems are contributing to your demand, and you're able to make a much more logical and strategic decision as to how you want to shed your demand. So great use of the data there. So moving on to the next slide. We'll talk a little bit about what the savings, and these savings are from major organizations, government agencies and such. And I think I primarily focused on FEMP, but we'll see as we go through. So as I said, there's significant savings for people just understanding, and it's called the Hawthorne effect, but just knowing that the data is being tracked. So just by the act of having consumption information displayed maybe in a kiosk in a lobby, what FEMP, the federal government energy management program, is seeing is roughly a 2% savings based on that alone, with taking no other active steps. If you move a little bit further down the line with that, and you actually allocate your energy costs to the specific accounts that are using that energy, you push that up to about 5%. So, from 2 to 5% just by letting people know, here's how much your energy you're using, and here's how much it's costing for your department or your group. And if we move to the next slide, we'll see that these savings can get even deeper. So when you go a little bit further down the line and you do simple operational and maintenance improvements, things that are left on when they shouldn't be on, equipment that is very clearly inefficient and like that, and back one slide, things that are very, other way, one more. Okay, things that are very clearly inefficient, then you can save up to 15% pretty easily. As you take a look through your building, realize that just by having the data in front of you, and it's something we see very commonly, oftentimes when we install a system, a client will ask us, where am I going to get my savings from? I will say almost to a single client, every single one of them found very significant savings in places that they were not expecting those savings to be. When you take a look at it, having that granular data becomes very important for that purpose as well. And finally, FEMP also estimates that if you're a business and you do not have a proactive energy management program, you're going to spend 10 to 45% more per year on energy than you need to. So really not having the energy data, not treating your energy costs as a liability rather than just a cost of business is almost tantamount to driving with the rearview mirror. Get the real-time energy data and you'll be able to make some much more logical and proactive decisions on your sustainability drive. So what I'd like to say is that just taking from this data, I think that we've seen that the state and the city will both have very lofty goals. I think we all have a very heavy focus on sustainability and driving cost reductions every day. So what I would encourage everyone to do is really take a look. Take a look to see whether you can find a building that you might want to use as a pilot. Real key to that look is to look for a building that you have some accurate electrical information on in terms of how the circuits are laid out. Accurate single lines are fantastic. If it's a newer building and you know them to be up to date, that's fantastic. And contact a submetering professional, okay? And take a look at a couple of submetering options and have them provide you a price. Have them review with you what their system capabilities are. Have them help you understand what incentives you qualify for. And then when you're done with that, take out your utility bill from last year and take a look at the price that they provided you for that metering system and the cost that you paid for electricity the previous year. If the cost of the metering system is 2% or more of your bill, I can almost guarantee you that you'll have a very positive ROI and a very strong winner when it comes to terms of saving more than what you're going to invest in your metering solution. So I would encourage everyone to take those steps. Again, we're looking at anywhere between 2% and 45% based on how active a role you take in utilizing the energy data. Moving on to the next slide, for CircuitMeter, and I'll just close with this. We really do feel like we've got the most powerful metering technology, and it's not just about the hardware, it's about the platform and the services that you get with that as well. But at the end of the day, I'll just repeat, you can't manage what you don't measure. And if you have that complete energy data in real time, it's very, very likely that from places you didn't expect it, you're going to find very significant cost savings. So we look at it as a foundation upon which to build sustainability and drive sustainability with real data. And we encourage you to take a look at implementing that type of solution in your facilities. So with that, I say thank you, and I'm going to turn it back over to Frank.
Yeah, Kelly, and I want to apologize for the glitch we have here. We don't have a smart PowerPoint presentation, and that every time, there you go, it just bounces to the next slide for some reason. So we need to have some IoT specialists look at these PowerPoint mergers that we're doing here. So I apologize for trying to mess you up unintentionally. But yeah, thank you, Kelly. That was most helpful here. And we actually have a time for a few questions, and you're actually on the clock here talking about cost here. And we got a question: what is the average cost of a submetering system for a multi-residential building?
Yep. Well, so in addressing the cost for a metering system, it really can vary quite a bit. So really, it depends on how granular you want to get. And again, I would kind of go back to that comparison to your utility bill. But if you are looking at installing a system that really provides you your base metering of your main distribution panels, you could be talking anywhere from, several $1,000s up from there. If you wanted in a very large building to get very granular and really do a circuit level metering, you could spend, we've got a major hotel up in Canada that just did a very robust installation of a metering system, and I think they spent in the neighborhood of 100,000 on that. Now, the nice thing about it is, again, we have expertise in the incentive programs, and for that particular project, while the overall cost of it was around $100,000, we were able to identify about $80,000 worth of incentives. So we gave them
Wow.
8/10 of the car for free, so to speak. So
wow, that's fantastic.
Yep.
Great numbers there. Great numbers here. Okay, Alex, you're up. Question here: where do you see green leasing headed?
I would say I see green leasing headed in three different directions. One is pushing the envelope as far as landlords engaging with their tenants, and then two, being addressing health and wellness. So I think a lot of people, at least when you're trying to lease up a building or tenants are looking for space, that health and wellness factor is really a pretty big driver that we're seeing in the commercial real estate market. So I see leases are going to start to reflect more health and wellness, more provisions for well or indoor air quality, that sort of thing.
Yeah, I agree. The indoor air quality, the health and wellness. I see the millennials and the people that are, trying to be renting out these offices. I think they're going to be driving this, and we're going to get behind them and push for them to look toward the leasing language and to get these remedies done in the building, which we all know are vitally important and for their health and well-being and productivity. That's the major thing that buildings want to work in a building that's healthy, and avoiding absenteeism is a big big benefit on that, right?
Right, definitely agree.
Great. Okay, so Kelly, another one for you here. What does an energy management system provide value that is different from what I'm getting from my building automation system?
Yeah, well, it's a fantastic question, and I think I'm in a good place to answer that because I spent about 20 years in the building automation space. So, one of the main keys that I see, and especially when we talk about analyzing large data sets, is that when you take a look at the building automation system, the data that's available has to be all of the sensors and the actuators and all of the different things that make up a building automation system have to very actively be maintained. You have to calibrate temperature sensors, you have to calibrate thermostats, all those different assets, or the data that you receive from them will be suspect at best and erroneous at worst. So any analytics that you run on it and any proactive tip that's given from a system that's using that data may be leading you down a bad path. The nice thing about electrical data is that when you install an electrical meter, there's virtually no maintenance to be done. You install it and it will continue to provide very accurate data for decades. So that's the major difference that I see between the two technologies, and they work very well together, by the way. I don't want to say bad things about BMS systems. They absolutely have a place, but in data analytics, the reliability of the electrical data is phenomenal.
Great. Okay, Alex, question here is, who is the major driver, the tenant or the building owner? What are you seeing there from your feedback in the green lease world?
It definitely feel like a lot of the language and the way it's built, it's more for the landlord to kind of drive the conversation in terms of what they need out of the lease. But I wouldn't say that tenants don't have a voice and being able to advocate for what they need. I think if a tenant is able to look at their site selection and make sure that when they're looking for new spaces, that the buildings that they're selecting already have a good high performing agenda in place, in terms of they're good managers of their energy, they have a recycling program, they have an indoor quality program, making sure a tenant is informed up front so they know what they're getting into. is probably the first step, I think, for a tenant. And then, taking a look at and seeing what are there opportunities in the lease, and is your landlord potentially open to starting discussions about how to green the lease?
Great points. I would think would be a competitive advantage for them to have that type of language, and their buildings would get more occupied a lot with doing that. Fantastic. Right. Okay. Yeah. We got one more question for each of you, I think. Here, Kelly. Does your submetering system measure at the panel level? And if it does, how exactly does it read the data?
Yeah. So our solution is actually designed, again, one of the things that we really kept in mind as we were designing the hardware was to make sure that it was very, very simple to install, very, very cost effective, and very granular. So in essence, our primary metering solution is called the WebMeter 48. And that allows you to have 48 individual CTs tied to that meter. And the idea is that you mount that device right next to a breaker or a distribution panel. You pull your voltage reference in and your CTs in, make all the connections there. And the only other connection it has is an internet connection. So real easy, quick install. And it's something that we're really proud of because the install cost of metering systems is oftentimes more expensive than the hardware. So we've made sure that we took care of both ends of the spectrum there. And again, nice, clean, easy installation. So
beautiful, beautiful. Okay, last question for you, Alex. Where can I read more about what green lease leaders are doing?
That's a good question. Actually, next week I will be at the Better Building Summit, and IMT is working with the Department of Energy to put together a series of case studies for 2018's Green Lease Leaders. So probably approximately half of this year's Green Lease Leaders will have a write-up talking about their green leasing strategy, and that'll be available middle of next week.
Wow, okay, so you got some exciting adventures ahead of you. Good luck with all that.
Yes, thank you.
Yeah, and thank you everybody for joining us today. Again, we'll send this out as a recording, hopefully with less technical glitches. And thanks again, and have a great day. Goodbye, everyone.